Hey, my name is Saturn. You may or may not know me if you're watching this. You might know me personally, like you might be one of my friends or my family. But I'm a small producer based out of Colorado. I've been only been making music for 1 to 2 years, and I'm 17. I've been producing since actually producing since I was 15. I've been making music on and off since I was 13. But I'm making this video to break down some of my songs that I've made. And this is a documentation for myself because I know that in the future I will probably be better making music. And I'll want to look back on myself and see how I used to make music. And I obviously won't be able to remember how I made it because I can still listen to it, but I want to see how I made it. So I'm doing this so I can see my evolution and so that my family can also see how I make some music because they like some of my music. So I'll stop rambling on. We will get straight into what I'm going to be showing you. Okay, so the first song that I'm going to show you is called Mademoiselle, and this was like my first actual attempt at sampling. It's not the best. I've done better since then, but this is the song that's currently out on Spotify if you want to listen to it. But yeah, this song took maybe a week to finish, which isn't too hard. The song is fun. I had a lot of fun, and the song is heavily inspired off of a pretty popular song on TikTok called Lovely Bastards. I don't remember who it's by, but it's very heavily inspired off of that. It's not as good, but first thing I'm going to start with is I use a free online software for all of my productions. I do pay a subscription to access the instruments on this free online software. But something that this software does that I haven't seen other softwares do is it has its own sample packs. Every couple of weeks it releases a new sample pack. I don't remember what the most recent one is, but these are all of them. There is a lot of sample, like a lot of samples. Just look at that. Typically when I'm making a song, I'll just use like one of these perk samples like this one, which are really cool. Typically, I will already have a fundamental and then use these hi-hats or whatever drums on top of that. This time, I found a sample pack called Hush, and each sample pack has multiple different like groups in them. So there's like Hush Anthem, which is its own thing, which is pretty cool. But this whole thing seems to be like pretty weird trap beats. I found this one called Flute Night, which had this really cool synth. Which I thought was super fucking cool. The rest of it, I'm a little iffy on. Like the beat doesn't sound very good. I don't think this flute should be. I didn't think the flute should be the main one. I thought the synth should be the main one. But I did end up using a lot of this, like the synth bass, the hi hats, the flute. But I used that initial synth for the whole intro. The whole intro just plays this whole synth sample twice, and then what I did was I cut the first half of this sample off, and then I reversed it and put it leading in, so it kind of gives this cool riser effect. And that's a little muffled, obviously. This is where the inspiration from Lovely Bastards came in. It's got a chopped up vocal sample from an old song, and I wanted to do something similar to that. So I took the sample and I put a crap ton of effects on it, like crusher, reverb, and equalizer to pretty much remove a lot of low and high ends and just give it this really gritty sound. It's also quite a bit louder than the intro, which is good because I wanted that. And then I took a Memphis drum pack, which originally sounded like this. I added a pretty decent amount of effects to it, and I pretty much turned down all the bass and the treble, and then I added fuzz to give it this sound. After doing both of those, I had just this original synth melody with it being kind of distorted, so I needed to chop it up. So I gave myself a little bit of time, but it sounds like this. And that repeats throughout the entire thing. Now, after doing that, I just layered them on top of each other, and I got this. Now we get into the drop. So for the drop, I take this original split up and I make it louder and more open. And then I also give it some layers, which made it sound a lot better. And each of these is faded to left and right, if I remember correctly. That one's in the left, and this one should be in the right. And then I took the same reverse split apart and I put it here again to signify that it was going into this. But to make it different and show that it was going into a heavier beat drop, I found this, which is the Brick All Right drum fill, which sounds like this originally. But I decided to put some effects on it. So I gave it fuzz. I turned the fuzz really high to kind of like make that low end really come out. And I muted it and gave it higher bass. So now it sounds like this, which is a lot more gritty, which matches with this drum line. Together, they all sound like this. So I thought it was pretty cool. And then for the drop, I open up that drum so it's no longer distorted. I add hi-hats. Obviously, you need hi-hats. I add the flute, which goes underneath, and it's very muffled. I mean, you could tell I literally removed all of the EQ basically to where it's just these little parts on the high and low end. I gave it a lot of reverb, and I muffled it, and then had to turn it up to the max because I muffled it so much. But it sounds like this. Because I didn't want that to be the main melody. Then we have the synth bass, which I had to take the first part of the synth bass because it wasn't bassy enough and put it on a bass, like a higher bass frequency track. See, I have the bass turned all the way up. So now it sounds like this. Really simple, and besides adding some vocals at the end of the second part, which these are brick vocals again. So we have the brick fill and then brick vocals. Mama told me never to judge before listening. That's pretty much all I did, and this is what the drop sounds like all together. So after that drop, I wanted it to feel more underwater. So I pitched down the original sample. I added a little bit more reverb, but not too much. And then I took the original pitch down sample and reversed it to show that it was leading into something different instead of just the same thing. You can tell it's a little lower than the other ones. I used the same distorted drums, but I used a different kick, a little bit lower and more bassy one. Then I added a couple little small effects and some vocals. And then the final thing that I did to pull this all together was I stole the bass from the Hush Flute Night kit and I put it on here, which sounds like this. And then all together, they sound like this. Then what I did was I did a big switch, and I'm still don't really like this one too much. But I figured out the chord progression of this because I don't have a MIDI that I can put it into, so I just kind of have to listen and play it by ear. And this is the chord progression that it is. Then I took that same chord progression and I put it on some choir. I put it on I think this is a synth. And then I put some pretty 80s sounding drums with it. But, really beefed up. And then on with it all together, sounds like this. Then we go back into the same thing that was in the original intro. But it changes up right here. So we have it start to sound like it's going to go and do the same thing with with these, which were in the original one. But it changes. And I wanted it to go a little bit more aggressive. So I added a crap ton of sounds and made them all hit a 4 to the floor, very quick pattern that sounds like this all together. Which worked pretty well if you put everything together here. But after I did that, I needed to figure out because I wanted to switch it around a little bit because I didn't like how it was like I'd pretty much been using the same progression the entire time. So I didn't change the chord progression, but I did change how it was sampled. So now it sounds like this. Then I also changed the drum beat quite a bit. It uses a different snare and it's a little bit more fast paced, I guess. Then, after doing that, I realized it needed something else. So I took the original chord progression that I made and put it on a pretty beefy 808, which has quite a few effects on it. But even that didn't feel like it was quite enough. So I came up with a pretty stupid idea. There are these certain parts in the cutting, in the sampling that I did that have a like really hard hitting rhythm and they're right at the end of each bar. So this one goes like this. Then this one is, then this one is, and this one does have one, but I didn't follow it. So what I did was I took this original, turned it up quite a bit, and made it follow that same rhythm. So this is what it sounds like on its own. And then I also obviously made the drum pause for some of these parts, the more important ones. And then altogether, it adds this really cool breakdown right before the drop, which sounds like this. and it goes back into the exact same drop. Nothing has changed. It does the exact same thing. And then it goes into the outro, which is just a muffled version of the original one. And that's how I made this song. I had a pretty fun time. It was about 5 days of work, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.